There's a man going round taking names, and he decides who to free and who to blame. Everybody won't be treated all the same. There'll be a golden ladder reaching down when the man comes around. The hairs on your arm will stand up at the terror in each sip and in each sup. Will you partake of that last offered cup, or disappear into the potter's ground when the man comes around? Hear the trumpets, hear the pipers, 100 million angels singing. Multitudes are marching to the big kettle drum.
This is where we hold them. This is where we fight. This is where they die. And these shields, boys! Remember this day, man, for it will be yours for all time.
Spartans! Lay down your weapons!
Persians! Come and get them! Hold! Give them nothing, but take from them everything! Stay!
Come, Leonidas. Let us reason together. In the presence of a god, it isn't wise to stand against me, Leonidas. Imagine what horrible fate awaits my enemies when I would gladly kill any of my own men for victory.
And I would die for any one of mine.
There will be no glory in your sacrifice. I will erase even the memory of Sparta from the histories. Every piece of Greek parchment shall be burned. Every Greek historian and every scribe shall have their eyes put out and their tongues cut for their mouths. Why, uttering the very name of Sparta or Leonidas will be punishable by death. The world will never know you existed at all.
The world will know that free men stood against a tyrant, that few stood against many. And before this battle was over, that even a god king can bleed. My king. It's an honor to die at your side. It's an honor to have lived at yours. My queen!
morning, fellas. Everybody all right today? Sorry, we're kind of getting off to a rough start here, technically speaking, but we're here. Glad to have you. Any new timers here today? We're especially glad you're here. I know it's not easy to get up at this time of the day unless you get to be my age, in which time you were already up at this time going to the bathroom, and so that's not funny, right? When you get to be 50, it just happens. But I'm really excited for today for a couple of reasons. First of all, because of the material we're going to cover, but I'm just excited that football has finally kicked off, and the season is finally here. I don't know if you're like me, you've been struggling a little bit. Baseball, I mean, I appreciate the limited athleticism necessary for the game of baseball. I'm just saying, all right? I appreciate it, but baseball is really just a mild distraction until football arrives, okay? In fact, maybe you've seen this clip, but check out this clip. This kind of sums it up for me. Check out this George Carlin thing.
Football is rigidly timed, and it will end even if we have to go to sudden death. In baseball, during the game in the stands, there's kind of a picnic feeling. Emotions may run high or low, but there's not that much unpleasantness. In football, in the stands during the game, you can be sure that at least 27 times you were perfectly capable of taking the life of a fellow human being. Preferably a stranger. And finally, the objectives of the two games are totally different. In football, the object is for the quarterback, otherwise known as the field general, to be on target with his aerial assault, riddling the defense by hitting his receivers with deadly accuracy, in spite of the blitz, even if he has to use the shotgun. With short bullet passes and long bombs, he marches his troops into enemy territory, balancing this aerial assault with a sustained ground attack which punches holes in the forward wall of the enemy's defensive line. In baseball, the object is to go home and to be safe. I hope I'll be safe at home. Safe at home.
I'm sorry, man. With all due respect, Dave, I love you, man, but it ain't football. It's just baseball. You know, last week we kicked off our quest for authentic manhood, and I began last week by giving you an overview of what this season's going to be. And I gave you some presuppositions that are going to help to shape the messages that I share with you over this season. And I just want to go back and review a couple of them because I think it's important for you to remember them. The first one is that I believe that manhood today is in a state of confusion. When I say that, guys, I want you to understand that right underneath the surface in American life today, for most men, is this cauldron of confusion. Men who don't really know what it means to be a man. Now, we understand some of the basics. I mean, most of us understand that there's this idea of going out and making a living, and that many of us will go out and eventually get married, things like that. But overall, there's this missing understanding of the things that are noble and right about manhood, substantive things that come from our soul. And as a result, most men today are lost. And because of this lostness and uncertainty, what we do as men too often is we default to just trying to catch some shifting wind of our culture. And we're always looking for, what does culture say that a man is? And we don't say that out loud, but what we're thinking is, man, maybe I can find out from our culture the way in which I'm supposed to act. Unfortunately, our culture is constantly changing the plan. There's this constant shifting back and forth of what it means. to be a man. And as a result, manhood becomes this kind of moving target, if you will, very difficult to pin down. I also told you last week that along with confusion, there isn't a compelling vision for what calls a man up. What is it that challenges men to live their lives with their shoulders square and their jaw set, leaning into life, calling us up to live our lives up? And we all know that the world we live in today has lots of things that call us to live down. They're constantly calling us to dumb down the way we live our lives, dial it back a notch in the way in which we conduct ourselves. And there's no compelling vision that says this is how you can live your life to the fullest. This is how you can breathe deep when it comes to living. I also made you some promises last week. I told you that if you'll stick with me for all this entire season, that you would end up with a clear, compelling definition of what a man looks like and what it means to be a man. I promise to you that if you would stick with us all the way through, that you would learn some manhood language. And today you're going to learn at least 4 new words, and actually several more, that you can add to your vocabulary of manhood. It'll give you the opportunity then to be able to communicate with other guys in this room on a much deeper level than normal. I told you that if you'll stick with me for the whole season, that you would make some significant discoveries about yourself. And guys, I want to tell you, I can make that promise because every single year I hear reports from guys who said, man, this changed my life. Better yet, from guys' wives and from their children saying, not only did my dad come out of this different than he began, but it's literally been a change that now is stuck with him, and he's actually doing a great job at being a better man. I told you that you would make some new friends, and the bottom line is, fellas, look, we're kind of all doing this together. We kind of have the same goal in mind if you really think about it. Because at the end of the day, you don't come out here at 5:30 in the morning for no apparent reason. There's got to be a compelling reason. And I believe it's because you want to be better men. That's why I come here. I want to be a better man. I want to understand better how I can carry myself, how I can live my life in a way to the full. And so we have a compelling common goal, and around that we can develop new friendships. And then last, I told you that by the end of the season, you would have your own personal manhood plan. And I'm going to hand that draft out to you next week. And you can begin to work on that on your own. We'll work on it some together in these sessions, but primarily you'll be working on that on your own. And it's a chance for you to develop a plan that says, for me personally, I need to do this by this date. Now, most guys don't want to read the directions, right? It's a lot easier to screw it up first and then come back and have somebody else try to fix it, right? But the bottom line is, guys, we may not like to read the directions, but the reality of this whole thing is when a guy knows where he's going, when he has a clear picture of how to get there, he's a lethal force that is, when it's unleashed in his life, creates a lot of power. Now, next week, I'm going to give you that draft. We'll begin to work on that, and you'll work on that for the entire season. Now, this morning, what I'd like to do is, as we begin this journey, as we kind of roll out of base camp on our journey together, I want to give you maybe a vision of what a real man looks like. And I want to begin by just sharing writings of Garrison Keillor, who is a humorist, but he's also very intuitive when it comes to manhood. He says this: Plato, St. Francis, Leonardo da Vinci, Vince Lombardi, Yogi Berra. You don't find guys like that caliber today. What you find is a terrible gender anxiety. Guys desperately trying to be Mr. Right. The man who can bake a pie, go shoot skeet, come back and toss a salad, converse intimately about intimate matters, cry if need be, laugh, hug, be vulnerable, perform passionately in bed, and then the next day go off and lift them bales and tote that barge. And then he finishes, he says, trying to be Mr. Perfect is a terrible way to spend your life. And I agree. Guys, perfect is the image that the world gives us of how we're supposed to be. I mean, we begin to get this idea that somehow I'm supposed to be everything to everybody. We need to somehow be everything all at once. And the man who can do that, who can do it all, is a success. That's the idea that the world gives us. And yet the bottom line is, man, that just sets you up for failure. It sets you up to be frustrated. You walk around with a scowl on your face because, man, it is impossible to be all of that. And so I think maybe the better term, instead of Mr. Perfect, is the idea of living a life that is balanced. A life that is balanced. I think that what the world needs is men who are able to balance their lives and live their lives so that it is in cohesively working together rather than all over the map trying to be all things to all people. Today I'm going to give you 4 faces of manhood. And I think that it'll help you get a clear picture of what we're talking about, because when these 4 faces work in unison with one another, in balance with one another, you will see what a real man looks like. We saw this balance in the video clip earlier of Leonidas, a guy that could stand and look death in the face and say, "Hold the line. Give them nothing, but take everything." And then, even with his last dying breath, could change from being this warrior to being a lover and thinking of his wife, being courageous, being a friend, dying there with his friend on the battlefield. This balance of faces of manhood is what I want to talk to you today about. And the first face is the king face. Now this king face doesn't come easily to men. The fact is it's a face that has to be cultured and nurtured and developed over time. There are lots of ingredients that go into the king face. Things like your parents, your mentors, heroes that a guy has, the stories that he can tell, faith that he has within him, his ability to persevere through special and difficult times. All of this and the idea of integrating his faith and his religion into his life, all of these are ingredients that create in the soul of a man over time this principle that we call the lover of right. The king face is the noble face. It's the man who loves the right thing, regardless of cost, regardless of convenience, regardless of consequence. It's simply because it's the right thing. It's the face, the king face, that a man shows when he refuses to cheat on a business deal, even though it may be lucratively to him financially. It's a face a man shows when he comes time to keep a promise, even though now that promise is going to be very difficult to keep. It's the face he shows when he makes good on a debt, when he risks his own life to save another, when he is on a business trip and a female companion propositions him and he refuses. That's the king face. It's the face he shows when he could take advantage of someone and chooses not to. It's the face of the king that stands up to a friend when he sees his friend leaving the straight and narrow, kind of wandering off the path. And he stands up to his friend, jeopardizing even risking losing his friendship because it's the right thing to do to call his friend back to a noble way. The king face is the face he shows without blinking in the face of danger. It's a face that does not waver, even though he knows there are consequences. There is risk when it comes to standing up against what is ignoble and wrong in favor of the right thing. That's the king face. It's the face that reflects righteous energy. The Bible, there's an example of that in the prophet Nathan. Nathan comes to King David and confronts him about his secret adultery, knowing full well that in doing so he risked being banished from the kingdom, or even more so, being put to death by the king. And yet he does it anyway. And he goes to the king and he says, "You have sinned. You're wrong. You're out of line, man." That's the king face. And it's also the king face that King David himself puts on. When confronted by this righteous man, instead of saying, "I didn't have sex with that woman," instead, he puts on his king face, the noble face, and says, "You're right. I screwed up. I've sinned." This king face is characterized by many things, but namely by strong convictions, courageous moral choices, a servant spirit, righteous leadership. And it doesn't come easy, guys. This king face is forged in the crucible of life, day in and day out. Every guy here is either developing his king face or he's in the process of snuffing it out. Because it comes through the decisions that you make. Sometimes, it's like climbing a mountain. In the beginning, early stages of your life, as a young man, you make these decisions, and sometimes they're in small deals, but the bottom line is you choose the right path. You make the right decision, and you summit that small little knoll, and there's a taller mountain for you to climb, a bigger decision for you to make, a more critical choice that you have to choose. And so over time, as you choose the right path, as you make the right decisions, as you choose nobility, that king face begins to grow and develop and to shine and to get greater and grander. As the mountain gets steeper and more rugged, and as you choose the right path, your life becomes stronger and brighter, this king face. Many of you will remember back in 2003 when Hurricane Isabel went ripping up the eastern seaboard. In its path was Arlington Cemetery and the tomb of the unknown soldier. The unknown soldier tomb has been perpetually guarded 24/7 since its inception. Orders came down that because of the severity of this storm, you are authorized to abandon your post if necessary and seek shelter nearby. When the storm arrived, the driving rain and the pounding of that wind would have certainly been a reason enough. But these soldiers who were tasked with guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier chose to stay their post and disregard their authorization. Even though technically it would have still been guarded because they could have been nearby and had kept their eye on the tomb. No, they chose to stand and march their post. The next day, the grounds crew busied themselves picking up the remnants of 24 trees that had been uprooted by the howling wind and the driving rain. Newspaper reporter heard about this, and they began to interview these soldiers, and they asked one of the soldiers, "Why would you do that?" The soldier's reply is classic king face. That was easy. It was the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And if you close your eyes for just a moment, you can see those soldiers on that narrow pathway in front of that tomb, marching, leaning into the wind, struggling to keep their balance as the wind drives against them and the rain beats against them. And they chose instead to stand their post. Guys, they didn't just wake up one day as soldiers, suddenly valorous. They didn't just suddenly become that kind of a guy. These are men who over time, through good decisions, through hard times, through difficulties, perhaps even on the battlefield, had learned what the king face looks like. We see the king face in Scripture, Proverbs 4 and verse 18, where it says, the path of the righteous is like the light of the dawn that shines brighter and brighter until the full day. That's the life of a king face. A man who puts on the king face grows stronger over time. His life doesn't fade. You know, for a lot of us older guys in the room, when we were younger, our exploits, the things that we chose to do in our youth, sleeping around, drinking all-night parties, things like maybe even drugs, whatever, that kind of a life fades over time. You know what I'm talking about, especially if you're an older guy. Man, it's hard for those all-nighters now. It's hard getting out of bed after a binge. It's difficult. Your life fades and withers away, that life. But the life of a king grows stronger and brighter with every day. You know these guys. The older they get, it seems like the greater their influence, the more energy they have, the more passion for life they have. And you say, I want to be around that kind of a guy. And those kind of men have the king face because their life, it just gets stronger. Man, and they hit 70, they hit 80, and they're still going strong. Yeah, they can't do the same things physically they could do, but you know that's a life worth emulating. Strength comes from the face of the king. Proverbs 20 and verse 7, a righteous man who walks in his integrity, how blessed are his sons after him. For those of us who have sons, that means a lot. Because, man, there are a lot of things you can give your sons. You can give them cars and clothes and toys, and you can spend time with them and take them to the ball game. You can give them big bear hugs. All of those things are good. But the greatest thing you can give your son is your integrity. How blessed are your sons after you because you built into their soul integrity. You built into their soul a substance that they can't get anywhere else in life. You can't email for it. You can't buy it at the store. And it builds within us a solid core upon which they can draw from. And men, your sons, without integrity, without that core substance in their life, are nothing more than paper lions. How blessed are the sons after him when he passes along that integrity. This is what the king face is all about. It's a man who reflects righteous energy all through his life, and he gets brighter and stronger with years. And you know what? By the time you get to be 50, you start getting on past 50, 60, guys don't sit around comparing their houses and their cars and their 401k anymore. We talk about things that are far deeper. We compare character. We want to know, we want to talk about a man's name, his good name, if he still has it. That's what matters to an old guy, is a man's name. It's the king face. Then there's a second face. It's the warrior. We certainly saw that in the video clip. The warrior face is a guy who says, man, let's start this company, let's build it up, let's issue an IPO, let's go national, and let's make millions of dollars, and goes out and does it. It's this warrior face that says, man, you know what? I'm going to lose weight. Joins the gym. He's there every morning, and he's working out, and he's taking care of himself, and he's eating right, and he loses weight because he said he would. He conquers. I'm going to win. It's the face of Christopher Reeve, struck down by a tragic accident in the prime of his career, paralyzed on a breathing machine, who chose to continue to live his life to the full. He became a relentless fundraiser for research, spinal injury research. This is a man who refused to shrivel up and go away, but he instead chose to live his life all the way up to the very day he died. He was a warrior for the cause. Some would say that being a warrior is what cost his life, because he didn't take care of himself, and he ended up killing himself because he was such a warrior. The warrior face. Men love warriors, don't we? I mean, man, we like a good fight. Till the day he died, he was that way. It's a face that we saw on 9/11 on that airplane, who said, let's roll. That's the face of the warrior. We love him. It's the face of battle figures, legendary figures like George Patton, Teddy Roosevelt, Alexander the Great, and of course, William Wallace. We love warriors. Business warriors, Jack Welch, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, Sam Walton. Sports warriors like Kobe Bryant, Randy Couture. These are warriors. You see it in them. Fictional warriors like The Gladiator, even real-life stories like Saving Private Ryan. For many of us in this room, we see our own warrior right here in this room in Russ Rowland. A man who has chosen to live his life to the full. And we love these kinds of men. All of it stirs within the soul of a man, because there's something within us that just likes a good fight. We like it when we can slug it out. That's the warrior face. It's a man who can take life head on and win. It's the guy that can take the other guy's best punch and still be standing. It's the guy who works harder and lasts longer and outlasts his competition. That's the warrior face. Now, sometimes, I need to say this, the warrior face can get out of control. Just saying. Let me read to you this story. I read this every time I get a chance because it's a funny story. Dave Barry writes about guys. He says, guys aren't stupid, they just act that way. One recent morning, I was driving in Miami on Interstate 95, which should have a sign that says, warning, high testosterone levels next 15 miles. In the left lane, one behind the other, are two well-dressed, middle-aged men, both driving luxury, telephone-equipped German automobiles. They looked like responsible business executives, probably both named Roger, with good jobs, nice families, and male-pattern baldness. The kind of guys whose most violent physical activity on an average day is stapling. They were driving normally, except the guy in front, Roger 1, was thoughtlessly going only 65 miles an hour, which in Miami is a speed reserved for going through car washes. Roger 2 pulled up behind him until the two cars were about an electron apart and honked his horn. Of course, Roger 1 would have none of that. You let a guy honk at you, and you're basically admitting that he has a bigger stapler. So, Roger 1 stomps on his brakes, forcing Roger 2 to swerve onto the shoulder, where, showing amazing presence of mind in an emergency, he was still able to make obscene gestures with both hands. At this point, both Rogers accelerated to somewhere around 147 miles an hour and began weaving violently through dense rush hour traffic, each risking numerous lives in an effort to get in front of the other, screaming and spitting all over their walnut dashboards. I quickly lost sight of them, but I bet neither one backed down. I quickly lost sight of them, he says. Their co-workers probably wondered, well, what happened to him? Where the heck is Roger, they probably said later on in the morning. unaware that even as they were speaking, the dueling Rogers, still only inches apart, were nearing the Canadian border. I just love that because, man, I've missed an off-ramp or two in my life. I'm just saying, it's true. Sometimes the warrior comes out in us in extreme ways and we lose control. The warrior face reflects conquering energy. It's a face that's characterized by initiative. Think about it. The warrior goes out after it. The face is characterized by protecting. The warrior's the one who protects, who stands in front and shields others. A warrior provides. He goes out and he says, listen, I'm going to take care of you no matter what it costs. The face of a warrior perseveres in the midst of adversity. And it's the face that fights. And the true warrior is not a destructive force. It's a positive energy force. You may have heard me tell this story before about my son Matt. During his final season of wrestling in high school, he'd had a great season. He was 41-5. 3 of those 5 defeats were to the same guy. His name is Alex Mack. You can watch him play on Sundays now because he was a first-round draft pick of the Cleveland Browns. During the CIF wrestling tournament, Matt had just breezed through the first 4 rounds. He had 3 pins and a major decision, and I mean, he was just rocking their world. But in the finals, he came up against a guy that was basically his mirror image. And during the 3rd period of that match, they were dead even. In a clinch, Matt's shoulder was severely dislocated. So he went over to the side of the mat, and as soon as his coach saw his shoulder, he said, hey man, we're going to have an injury forfeit here. There's just no way you can go on. Matt looked at his coach and said, hey, this is a CIF finals. We're not forfeiting anything. You got to reset my shoulder. And so right there on the side of the mat, the coach reset his shoulder. Matthew went back out on the mat. His opponent, knowing that he was basically one-armed, came after him pretty hard. He was able to weather the storm and made it into overtime. And in overtime, with basically one arm of strength, he was able to lock up on the guy and drive him out of bounds. The referee warned his opponent, said, you got to stay in bounds. Matt drove him out again, and on the 3rd time, Matt was awarded a point for stalling and won the CIF championship with a dislocated shoulder. That, my friends, is a warrior face. We got to get this job done. We got to finish what we start. I'm not going to quit. Are you out of your mind? That's the warrior face. I'm going to win. It's the face of 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 11. Paul is writing to a young man, and he's calling out the warrior in him. He says, pursue righteousness and godliness and faith and love and perseverance and gentleness. Fight the good fight of faith. And listen, take hold. That word there is seize. He says, seize the eternal life for which you were called. I want you to take a look at those terms there for a minute, because those are what I call noble upturns: godliness, righteousness, faith. These things are not easily obtained in a man's life. Love, perseverance, they're the kinds of things that you have to work hard for. You have to fight for them. And it takes a while to take hold of those kinds of things. And here's an older man looking into a younger man's life and calling out the warrior in him. He says, listen, you pick up your sword and you fight for this, because it's worth fighting for. The warrior face. The 3rd face is a face of the lover. Now, the lover is a face that is as unnatural to a man as the warrior is natural, because love, for whatever reason, comes hard for most of us. But it's the lover who can pick up on the real needs of his wife. The lover who is willing to let go of another good business deal in order to spend a little more time at home with his family. The lover who is able to open up his heart and share his feelings, even if they're painful ones. He's able to connect with other guys. As we said last week, peel back that manhole cover and just take a look inside and connect with guys around sensitivity and feelings. And it gives romantic energy, this lover face. This is a face that's characterized in words like tenderness, sensitivity, sacrificial care, emotional openness, and physical affection. I want to read to you a letter. It's a letter written by a warrior who is able to put on a lover face, who is able to balance these two, the lover and the warrior. His name is Major Sullivan Ballou. Civil War 1861. A warrior writes this letter to his wife days before the Battle of Bull Run. And he says, "The indications, my dearest Sarah, are very strong that I shall move in a few days, perhaps even tomorrow. And lest I should not be able to write you again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eyes when I am no more. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the Revolution, and I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all of my joys in this life to help pay that debt. But, Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence can break. The memory of all the blissful moments I have enjoyed with you comes crawling over me, and I feel most deeply grateful to God and to you that I've enjoyed them for so long. But how hard it is for me to give them up and to burn to ashes the hopes of future years when, God willing, we might have lived and loved together and seen our boys grow up to be honorable men around us. If I do not return, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I loved you. Know that when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it shall whisper your name. Forgive my many faults and the many pains that I've caused you. How thoughtless, how foolish I've sometimes been. But oh, Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth to flit unseen among those they love, I shall be with you. In the brightest day and in the darkest night, always with you. And when the soft breeze fans your cheek, it shall be my breath. Or the cool air on your throbbing temple, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn my death. Think I am gone, and then wait for me, for we shall meet again." Just a few days later, Major Sullivan Ballou died at the Battle of Bull Run. A warrior, yes, but a lover as well. Balanced between the two. Ephesians 5 and verse 25, when the Apostle Paul gives men, all of us, a tall order, when he says, "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church." And then he says, here's how you love your wife. He says, here's how you put the face of a lover on. Jesus Christ gave himself up for the church. And if you're a husband who knows how to love, you're going to give up yourself for your wife. That's the face of the lover. And finally, we come to the face of the friend. Most men don't have friends. I mean, real friends. Part of the reason's because to have friends, you've got to connect with them on a soul level. You've got to spend time with friends. We want friends. We want people who will give to us, who will invest in our lives, who will spend time with us, but we just don't have time for it. And so we live in these very superficial relationships with a lot of guys where we're not close, and we're certainly not close enough to trust them with the deepest secrets of our life. We have no one that we can talk to, that can talk straight up to us, that can get in our face and give it to us straight. Because that requires time in order to develop a deep relationship. It's kind of like climbing a mountain. You know, when you go mountain climbing, one of the first things they do is you tie off on a rope and you're connected with several other climbers, right? And so, if you think about this, when you're, just a few feet off of the ground and you're connected with these other guys and you're climbing, and you kind of have to climb in sync with everyone else as you're climbing the hill, and you can't go faster than the guy behind you, and you can't go faster than the guy in front of you. So you have to, and it's kind of cumbersome. And that rope, it's like, man, do I really need this? And you look down, and it's like, well, it's not that big of a deal. I don't really need this rope. But man, when you're 5,000 feet up on the side of that mountain, and you come to that sheer wall that you've got to traverse from one side to the other, and all there are no handholds and just a 4-inch ledge for you to stand on, you better well know, I want to be connected to that rope and 2 more just like it. How foolish would it be? Say, I don't need no stinking rope. I don't need this. This is just holding me back. It's the same way with manhood. This mountainhood, this of man, I'm telling you, you can't do that alone. When you're climbing that mountain of masculinity, you need other guys around you that you're tied off to, so that you're not alone in that process. Because, man, I'm going to tell you right now, doing life alone is devastating and deadly. What's true for mountain climbing is true of manhood. You cannot climb that mountain disconnected from other guys. You need to be connected with other men who can speak into your life, who can call out the best in you, who can cheer for you when you succeed, who can admire your efforts, who can be your friend. You need those kind of guys. This friend face is reflecting connecting energy. And it's characterized by things like loyalty. I love that word. Loyalty, accountability. Friends hold one another accountable. Challenge. Friends challenge one another. Call us up. And friends, the friend face also reflects fun. It's a lot of fun to be around other guys. One of the reasons I think that a lot of guys come to men's fraternity is they think, man, there's a possibility that I could actually link in with some other guys, that I could join up with some guys, and that we could do life together, that I could find some men that I could literally process all of this material with, that I could open up my soul to, and I could lay it out there, and they would safely handle that information. Whatever it is, as personal as it could be, they would safely handle it. They would help me to process it, and together we could do life. Man, I wish I could have something like that. It's also a friend who notices in your life the good things when no one else is noticing, and compliments you. It's a friend who comes alongside of you when he sees you begin to take a walk on the wild side and says, hey, pal, you're acting like an idiot. Get it together. That's a real friend. You know, a lot of guys don't have friends like that because we're not friend worthy. Are you? Are you friend worthy? See, to be a friend worthy means you have to have connecting energy to other guys. You have to be willing to risk and to reach out and to spend time with and cultivate a relationship. In Proverbs 17:17 it says, a friend loves at all times and a brother is born for adversity. And I bet for some of you, even as you hear that, you desire, because right now in your life, you're facing some adversity. And right now, all you're thinking about is, man, I wish I had somebody to talk to. I wish I didn't have to go through this alone. I wish that I had someone I was connected with in a deep friendship. So that's the friend face. And those are the 4 faces of manhood. Hopefully synchronized and balanced together. The king face, the warrior face, the lover face, and the friend. Now, I want to conclude today because there are some ugly caricatures that masquerade as these noble faces. You gotta, in your diagram there's kind of an explanation of this. See, the king face, if you get to going too far to the right of the king, you don't have a king, you have a tyrant. That video we saw, that wasn't a king that was talking to Leonidas, walking down on the backs of others. That's a tyrant. But if you go too far the other way of the king, you have an abdicator. Someone who's compromised himself and thrown down his sword. With the warrior face, you lean too far to the right, that's not a real warrior, that's a destroyer. You know guys like this. They're not real warriors, they're just scorched earth. Wherever they go, they just blow people up and they blow things up. But if you go too far to the left, you're just a wimp. You're not a warrior. You're just some wimp. The lover, if you lean too far to the right, you become critical and harsh and judgmental. Your family, they don't see you as a lover, they see you as somebody who's just harsh and you're just critiquing them. You don't see the good that they do, all you do is point out the wrong. If you lean too far to the left, though, you become cold, withdrawn, disconnected. For the friend, if you lean too far to the right, you're just a user. Some of you may have read Alan Toffler's book, Future Shock, many years ago. He talked about how the world would continue to just keep speeding up to the point that we would not have real friendships. We would have what he called Kleenex relationships, where you would simply take them, use them, and throw them away. Sounds familiar in a lot of relationships today. But if you lean too far to the left, you're not a user, you're a loner. The friendless American male. And too often these honorable faces get replaced by ugly caricatures that I just described to you, tyrants and users. And what the world says, see, men are all pigs. Men are all jerks. Men are all brutes. Men are all insensitive. Men are all loners. And they come up with these one-sentence definitions that just kind of throw us all into the lump together because they're seeing something that's not real manhood. And many men today lack the king in their life. And without a king, the warrior runs rampant. Begins to fornicate and cheat and pillage and rob and beat and abuse, overindulge, because there isn't a king riding that warrior, helping the warrior fight for the right things. And the warrior without a king becomes a destroyer. And too often that happens. Where our world would actually, we see that they honor that. If you can blow things up, if you can take advantage of people, that's considered, I guess, the way of the world. Another thing that's really unfortunate in our world is that our feminized culture has literally emasculated the warrior in a lot of young men. And the result is that we've created a soft male, indecisive as direction, weak when it comes to leadership. And our culture is increasingly separating fathers from their sons. And the fathers are being replaced by mothers who are then being forced, guess what? To put on a warrior face. Because they got to take care of business because the men are nowhere to be found. Men are MIA. And so the women are being forced to take on these roles of warrior. And so guess what happens? Young boys hear this from their mothers. Johnny, don't hit. Don't run. Stop running around. You're making too much noise. Get down out of that tree. You're going to get dirty. You ever hear that? And what you end up with is a feminized male. I didn't say effeminate. I'm not talking about traits, physical traits that are feminine. I'm talking about a guy that walks around, he looks like a man, he talks like a man, but inside he's indecisive, he's hesitant, he holds back because he's not sure. He's been emasculated by our society. So here's the point. Our world, look at me. Our world is desperate for a balanced man. Men who are able to wear the warrior face of nobility, the lover of right. Balanced with the warrior face that is fearless in the face of danger, no matter the cost or consequence. Balanced with the face of the lover who is in touch with his emotions, who's in touch with other men and not afraid to bare his soul and to be sensitive and caring, who picks up on the needs of his wife. Balanced with the face of a friend. Someone who will walk through it with you through thick and through thin, through good days and bad. Think about this. We have north and south and east and west. Those are all like the points on a compass, right? And then we have winter and spring and summer and fall. Those are the seasons of the year. And we have earth, wind, fire, and water. The elements of the earth. And then there's the king, the warrior, the lover, and the friend. The real manhood. Now here's my question for you. When you look in the mirror, what kind of a man do you see? See you next week.